Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this hearing for the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. Bienvenue à tous à cette rencontre du Comité de délégation pour la Ville d'Ottawa. Just as some opening remarks, do know that the Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal that's appointed by City Council to make certain decisions on varying applications under the Planning Act, most notably consents and minor variances. So my name is Anne Tabby, and with me this evening is our full panel. Members Kathleen Willis, Colin White, Scott Hindle, and Julia Markovich. So I don't think we're going to have any issues with technical difficulties. If we do, I don't think we're going to lose quorum. So I'm not going to go through that part of the usual opening remarks. Do take note, as always, that this hearing is being live streamed on YouTube. You can get a copy of the video if you'd like it. On the city's website. I think you can actually just Google YouTube and find it the same way if you care to. If you want to see a copy of the agenda for tonight, after tonight, then again, you can do that on the city's website. So also before we get going, I just want to recognize we have a lot of really capable staff that support us in everything we do. So we've got with us tonight, Secretary Treasurer Matthew Garnett. We also have three coordinators that make the magic happen. Behind the scenes, we have Ms. Emily Byers, Ms. Mandy Nguyen, and Mr. Alexander Jones. So hello to all of you, and thanks for your consistent support. So folks, there's a lot of issues that surround development in the city of Ottawa, but this particular tribunal is very limited in what it is that we can deal with. So essentially, if it's not on the application, if it's relief that's required, or sorry, if it's not relief required from the zoning bylaw under a minor variance, I can tell you right now that we can't deal with those. So if you have a problem with the massing or maybe with a rear yard deck, that none of which needs any relief from the zoning bylaw, those are not issues that we're going to deal with as part of our discussions. Other things that we can't really talk about is property maintenance or property values or any of that, any illegal construction, because really the way we deal with it is we're trying to rectify issues here. So we're trying to deal with it as if no construction has occurred. And at all times, we will not allow any adverse or negative comments about anybody participating in these proceedings, whether it's the applicant, the agent, landowner, or a resident, or anyone involved. So then finally, the last thing is if we find during the course of discussions that additional minor variances are required, then we would need to adjourn that application and step it down to the very next meeting of the committee, as long as we could meet the timelines for circulation. And so lately we've had an awful lot of adjournments because we're catching some of these things just before they come to us. So we do have an example again of that, I think, tonight. So it doesn't happen too often in discussions that it comes out because they are being caught, but just be mindful that it can still happen. So as part of the statutory declaration or public notification requirements, every applicant is required to essentially erect a sign on the property and to then file a statutory declaration with us that essentially says that that has been done in keeping with the regulations under the Planning Act. So since we've moved on to virtual platform for these hearings, we typically don't get these stat decks copies. The staff doesn't receive them. So we'll do an oral and we'll run through that for those applications. And I believe all of the applications will require that oath or affirmation. During the hearing process, let's talk about that. So the way we start, you saw the agenda at the beginning of the hearing. We do try to stick to that when it makes sense to do that, but sometimes there are some applications that either need to go a little bit later because of the controversies surrounding some of the issues. Those we try to to put towards later in the meeting, and then deal with things that are really quite straightforward at the beginning. So I think this evening, though, we're actually going to follow pretty much the order of items that we have before us, other than adjournments, of course. So with that, we may ask you for a presentation. Sometimes we fast track and go straight to questions for clarification. And then we may ask you questions if there's new information that you're bringing forward. Once all of that is done, we then will deliberate and make a decision on the application. Of course, we can deny, we can grant, we can adjourn for the reasons that I gave, and we can reserve. And reserving an application is an exception, and only when there is a lot of new information that's brought to the committee's attention that wasn't part of the evidence that we had a chance to review prior to the hearing. So I don't believe there's any applications on our agenda this evening that qualifies for that, but I thought I would make that clear in any event. So if you wish to speak and you're not on my speakers list, that's quite all right, but I will ask you to start by stating your name, and I may ask you to spell it for the record, and also give us your municipal address. We do have a timer. I don't know if you've noticed, folks, those of you who tune in with us on agents that may be with us on a regular basis, we now have a timer. So where we ask for presentations, we can elect to use it. And where we have members of the public speaking, we will, in fact, use that tool, which we had in person. I don't know if you'll recall, we had that bell go off at the 5-minute mark. So once the committee's made a decision, we do issue the decisions in writing 10 days from the hearing. And that formal written notification or decision then outlines the reasons for the committee's decision. At all times, anyone who is not satisfied with the decision by the committee, you do have an option to appeal. You have a 20-day appeal period, and you can appeal it to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And there's, of course, a fee to doing that. So before we get going into the agenda, are there any members who have a conflict of interest declaration for any of the items either on our agenda or on the agendas of either panel 1 or panel 3? For the record, I'm not seeing any declarations of conflict of interest. I don't believe we have any minutes to adopt this evening. We did adopt a number of them the last time. And then I think we can go straight to the first adjournment request, which is for application for 2055 Baffin Avenue. And I believe I'm looking for the owner. In this case, Nathalie Rouleau. Do we have Madame Rouleau? Or Monsieur Rodney Basquin? Either one.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We cannot see you.
One sec.
Okay.
And now is it working?
Well,
Yeah.
there you go. We can
There you
see you.
go.
It is
Yeah.
working.
It's
All
working.
right, well, welcome. So we've been
Good.
made aware that there's an adjournment request on your application and that both staff and yourselves are in support. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Can you just give me a quick reason for the record as to why we're adjourning?
Yes. Yeah, it's the fact that we did apply for the minor variance the way it was. And there's a new planner that have took over the case. And she said there was a slight error in
Front.
from the front setback that she wanted us to modify. So due to that, we had to modify our drawing to provide a front setback
5.1
5.1
instead of
instead of
4.9.
So if that's the case, then if I understand it, you need an additional minor variance,
Yes.
correct? Okay. All right. So if that's the case, then we need to adjourn to a specific, or we can adjourn to a specific date. So I'm looking to Mr. Garnett to just give us some idea of what that best date might be.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Of course, it always depends on the completeness of all the new application materials being submitted. But if we have everything in order by very early October, I expect we would be able to circulate for November 2nd.
All right. Okay. That sounds like a plan.
I already submitted. I went over there today. I dropped the new drawing and the covering letter. So,
Okay. So did you get, but staff hasn't had a chance to review any of that, right? To ensure that it's what they need. So that'll happen hopefully this week, early next week, and then you'll be good to go to get the circulation for November 2nd. So does that work for you?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So members of the committee, any questions about the adjournment to November 2nd? Comments? All right. Yes, Ms. Willis.
Just a comment to the applicants, particularly given that there have been some public input on this, is that when you come back to make a presentation to us on November 2nd, please ensure that you have sufficient planning evidence to satisfy the committee as to the compatibility of the proposal with the neighborhood.
definitely. Thank you very much.
All right. You can submit a PowerPoint presentation to committee staff to do that if you'd like. And I'm sure there's maybe some guidelines on the website to help you in terms of how you might be able to present that, if that's helpful.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so members of the committee, all those in favor of adjourning this application to November 2nd? All right, for the record, the decision is unanimous and we are adjourning to November 2nd. So we'll look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.
Thanks. You too.
All right, we also have a request for withdrawal for applications 8 and 9 for 992 Fisher. And I believe I'm looking for the agent, Mr. Hume. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
So we've been made aware that you're looking for withdrawal on both the consent and the minor variance application. Can you confirm that?
That's correct, Madam Chairman.
So can you just give us, for the record, a couple of reasons for your...
Absolutely. The original purpose of the application was to create two parcels for financing purposes so that the applicant could obtain better financing terms. But we've reviewed the terms and conditions that the city has asked you to place on that. And it's clear that we won't be able to perfect the consents in time to put the financing in place. Financing has to be in place before the end of the year, and we will not be able to perfect the consents in that time. This is long-term financing, so the ability to go back and do it again is of no benefit to the owner at this time. And the other thing, Madam Chair, is that one of the conditions requires a conveyance of road widening to the city, and the owner doesn't believe he'll be able to fulfill that condition. So in that case, it's better to withdraw the application than go through the process and not be able to perfect the consents at the end of the day.
All right, so Mr. Hume, you are aware though that road widening requirements on severances is fairly typical?
Yes, absolutely, Madam Chairman. In this case, though, we had our surveyor map out the widening requirement, and it actually takes in the front face of the building. And so we identified that to the city on 2 occasions. And the response back was, we're still asking the committee to impose the condition, but maybe, so actually the response was twofold. First, the response was, your surveyor is wrong, which kind of hard. And then the second one was, we're going to still ask the committee to impose the condition, but it could be varied if, if you bring compelling evidence before the city transportation planner. And so, Madam Chairman, the owner doesn't have much faith that, even if he presents that compelling evidence, that the distance won't change. So he doesn't believe that he can, that it's in his interest to proceed with the application and try and work through that issue.
Okay, that's a very interesting story, because I don't know what you do with that. It seems to me that there's further discussion required, but if you're not proceeding, then what's the point?
And Madam Chairman, if you looked in the presentation that I gave you, I did include the survey that the surveyor provided us that shows that the line that the city was requesting is, I think it's 0.15 of a meter inside the front face of the building. So
I'm gonna let the city figure that one out.
yeah,
I did
so
have another question for you though, Mr. Hume.
Yes.
According to the staff's report, you still do have a non-compliance though, regardless of whether or not you're, withdrawing these applications. So what's your plan to deal with those?
So the city's issued, so we've gone back to talk to our lawyers about that, because the city issued building permits, and they issued grading and drainage plans and tree protection plans that were identified, clearly identified on that clearly identified what was constructed. So we've gone back to talk to the lawyers about what obligations the owner has in that regard. And we haven't finished those discussions at this time.
All right. Okay, thank you. That was a very fulsome response. Any questions from the members to Mr. Hume? Yes, Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a comment really on this. I realize that the applicant has chosen to withdraw the application. However, I would point out that it's our jurisdiction to whether or not to impose any condition, including the road widening requirement. In this situation, it sounds rather bizarre that the requested road widening affects the existing building, which is, I think it appears to be a fairly new structure. And also Fisher Avenue at this location, as I understand it, there's a substantial National Capital Commission greenbelt area on the opposite side of the road where any requirement to widen Fisher Avenue could easily be accommodated in that location without any, I think, without any negative impact on the NCC greenbelt. Also, with respect to the conditions and the concerns with respect to the angling of the driveway, personally, I don't have a lot of difficulty with the situation. And the width of the driveway problem is amounts to, I think, 6 or 7 inches. I'm sure that could be resolved fairly easily. But I'm just a little bit surprised. To me, this application doesn't seem to be that complex. However, I do recognize that the applicant is choosing to withdraw, and that's certainly within his prerogative to do so.
That's correct. Any other comments or questions? There's no approval by this committee required, so it's just accepting this withdrawal and recognizing it for the record. So with that, then, Mr. Hume, thank you for your explanations, and good luck with some of those issues.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good night.
All right, good night. Okay. We're going to go to a number of items that we would like to fast track. We're going to start with application number 1, which is for 1696 Belcourt. The name I have as the agent for the application is Mr. Caleb Miller, and I also have Murray Chown. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair. So Mr. Miller is here and he will be pleased to make a presentation on the applications as filed. I'd just like to advise the committee in advance of his presentation that I'd like to make some comments on the conditions once he's finished his presentation.
All right. So we're not asking for a presentation at this. We're just going to go straight to questions, but just give me a minute because we have the solemn oath. So I guess, Mr. Miller, you will be responding. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by this committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear, Madam Chair.
All right. With that, then let's open it up to questions about the proposal, and then I'll come back to Mr. Chown on the conditions. So any questions from our committee members on this? Pretty straightforward, it would appear. Okay, well, it is. All right, then with that, then before we go to the public, Mr. Chown, why don't we talk about those conditions now?
So, Madam Chair, thank you for this opportunity. In reviewing the conditions, condition number 3, which reads, the owners provide evidence to the satisfaction of the chief building official that both severed and retained parcels have their own independent water, sanitary, and storm connection shall comply with the Ontario Building Code. Madam Chair, I've been doing this for a very, very long time, as you know, and this is the first time I've seen this condition, and I'm a little puzzled by that when you've been imposing for a very long time the standard condition number 7, which reads, the owner provide evidence to the satisfaction of the development review manager of the East Branch within the PRED department to be confirmed in writing that both the severed and retained parcels have their own independent water, sanitary, and sewer connection. So both conditions are requiring separate services. Both require approval by somebody at the City of Ottawa. The irony is that the chief building official relies on an engineer to come to that conclusion. The development review manager in PRED relies on an engineer to provide that advice. And guess what? It's the same engineer that they both rely on. So I have no idea why Building Code Services is asking for a condition that's virtually identical to the standard condition you've been applying, or as I say, a very long time, maybe even decades, serves the same purpose, will be cleared by the very same person. I just want to save the time and effort and paperwork of dealing with 2 conditions when we really only need to deal with 1 condition, and would respectfully ask that the committee delete condition 3. Now, in fairness to Ms. Kelly, we only brought this to her attention late this afternoon, and she responded later this afternoon to inform us that she hasn't been able to follow up with Building Code Services, but on the surface, they're identical. I see no need to have the 2 conditions. It's just creating work. Thank you.
Yeah, so I did see that as well, Mr. Chown. So let's bring Ms. Kelly forward. Just want to understand sort of the provenance of number 3 before we discard it completely. So Ms. Kelly, I'm taking it that when you do your technical circulation, what is happening is there's the standard conditions that we've been dealing with, but now we've got Building Code Services who is more actively providing comments to us. So we're in a situation, I think, where they're trying to cover off the same thing that we've sort of always covered off. Is that correct? Do you see the duplication here?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is correct, that Building Code Services, through the technical review, has started to request this condition. It's my understanding that they want to review it themselves. And of the conditions where I've seen this, the building code services will provide the clearance for the condition, not an engineer. That being said, I do recognize the concern from the agent. Should the committee decide to remove one of the conditions, I think it would be best appropriate for condition 3, as Mr. Chown noted that condition 7 has been the standard approach.
So there is a way to amend 7 that might make our building code people happy, which is simply to add the words "in consultation with the chief building official or designate." We added those words. Did that not cover it all off? Make them happy that they will be consulted as part of that decision-making process? Mr.
Madam
Chown, you
Chair,
look like you
I
want to
would-
say something.
I would be okay with that minor amendment to the standard condition, and I will actually follow up directly with the chief building official on this matter. As I said, I know him reasonably well, and I don't think he would be deliberately creating work where it's unnecessary. So I will reach out to him directly on this, but if you feel more comfortable with that wording, I wouldn't object to it. Thank you.
All right, so members of the committee, are you folks okay with adding just those few words until we can get them to either amend the standard condition to work for both of them or decide one way or the other? Okay, I'm seeing nodding heads, so I think that's what we're going to do. So for the record, we're amending 7 to add the words "in consultation with the chief building official or designate," and we're deleting 3 from the list of conditions. Any others? What's the next one, Mr. Chown?
Madam Chair, that's it. That's all.
Oh, okay, made it easy tonight. That's great. Okay, well, in that case, I need to go to the public portion of the hearing. I don't believe I have anybody registered to speak to this item, but I'm going to make a call out to the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the committee either for or against this application? That's your opportunity is now to do so. It's a consent application on Belcourt. 1696 Belcourt. Anyone? Okay, so there doesn't seem to be anybody coming forward. So on this application then, members of the panel, all those in favor subject to the minor amendment to the condition number 7. For the record, the decision is unanimous. We are granting the application. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you.
All right, have a good evening. All right, application number 2 for 144 Bartonia Circle. And the name that I have is the agent, Mr. Watanabe. Watanabe? Do we have the agent? Coordinator.
Madam Chair, we do have the agent. I'm just bringing him in now. It's taking a moment there.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, so before we get going on discussion on your application, I need to read something to you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm that to be true.
Perfect. So we are not requesting a presentation from you, but we can open it up to questions at this point. Any members of the committee have any questions for Mr. Watanabe? No? All right. I only have one, and it has to do with some of the consultation that you undertook prior to being here this evening. Did you have a chance to speak with your neighbors?
Yes, I did. There was a discussion with my neighbor on the one side, and then the other side did not have, direct conversation with him because he had been in and out, and summer vacations were prohibitive for us to actually have a bit of the dialogue.
Okay, because you're aware that there is one of your neighbors, and I'd have to look at a map to see which side of the house it's on, but there have been some concerns by them about privacy and that kind of thing. Have you had a discussion about that?
Again, they've been gone for a prolonged period of time, and we were for a period of the discussion as well. So there actually hasn't been the opportunity to have the discussion. We had planned as part of the build of the deck to have privacy built in. So I know that was the initial concern that he had advocated, and so it's our intent to build privacy screens to prohibit any kind of visibility into either their property or ours when we're out on the uncovered deck. So that was the intent, but again, without having the ability to have a conversation because of his and our collective absence, just been difficult.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that explanation. I do have one question this time for staff. So, Ms. Kelly. Ms. Kelly, it just has to do with the notice. You didn't flag. Actually, you did flag a notice requirement, so I'm going to have to read that into the record. There is another one, though, that I did pick up on in your report that talks about the header of the public notice should be revised to include file number. And when I read the number, so it's D08-02-22/A-00240, which is exactly the same number that I saw on the notice. So can you tell me what was missing by that?
Yes, Madam Chair. It's not the file number that's at the beginning of the notice, but on the second page of the public notice in the top header, it doesn't include the actual file number.
Okay, because I'm seeing it on page 1. I'm seeing it on page 2. So where is it missing from?
I don't think I have the ability to share my screen, but notice A that I have says our file number in the header of the document.
Oh, and it's not supposed to be there. Is that what you're telling me?
Correct. Typically we have the actual file number.
Which is not the number I read out. It's a different number?
No, the number is correct, Madam Chair. Just at the top of page 2 and 3 of the public notice, it says in brackets our file number rather than the actual file number, D08, etc.
That's funny because mine does have that for whatever reason.
Oh.
So I'm not
Okay.
sure. So, okay, but that's fine. That's fine. So we're going, at least we've talked about it. If there's an error, let's make that correction. But that said, going back to the housekeeping items, Mr. Watanabe, I need to just ensure that we're okay with the changes we're making to the notice. It's a housekeeping thing, but we do need to do it for the record. So we're changing the word to permit an uncovered deck to project 3.66 meters into the required yard. And we're striking yard increased projected bracket uncovered deck, closed bracket, into the rear yard of 3.66 meters. So the rest is correct. Just changing the wording. Are you okay with that? Can you just confirm?
I am.
All right. Okay, good. Excellent. All right. So with that, there's no other questions from the panel. I don't believe I have anybody to speak on this item. There was a Mr. Or Ms. Gervais and a Mr. Ibrahim, but I don't think they're coordinators. Can you just confirm that they're not with us this evening?
Madam Chair, I do not see them. Oh, as I speak, I see he's raised his hand. I'll bring him in.
All right. Oops, we need to see you and we need your mic if you would like to address the committee. I'm just seeing HM, not sure who that is. Okay, I'm not seeing that person come forward.
Hello?
Yes. Can I have your name, please, for the record?
Yeah, my name is Hani Giris.
Okay, and can you give me your municipal address, please?
146 Bartonia Circle.
Okay. Good, excellent. Now we can see you. We can hear you and see you. All right. So did you have comments or questions that you wanted to make on this application, either for or against?
Yeah, my neighbor mentions that I wasn't available for past a few weeks. I was away from August 17, but I came back on Saturday, last Saturday. And I guess we had all summer long since June, but he never even initiated any call to speak or about his plan for a deck. I only expressed my comments to the committee, Madam Chair, for in writing on Sunday morning. So I believe all the committee members have it now. And as you said, it's all about privacy. I do have minors. Unfortunately, it was a deck at this height, 74 centimeter. And last year, I mentioned that I accommodated my neighbor request for only limiting the fence to 5.9 feet rather than 6.9 feet, which is the maximum. So, but now with this height and with the projection that he's asking for in the rear yard, he has a full, visibility onto my private family room and my kitchen. With the 3 kids around, since June, we didn't feel comfortable and secure because the reasons that they have been kind of feeling that someone is watching them 24/7. So I guess this is a situation could be for any reasonable person on his private family room to feel secure and feel privacy. As of for not having discussion, so I said that I was available all the time, and I left for overseas trip since August 17, but I came back on September 17. So that my concern is about privacy. I heard my neighbor, thankfully, he's mentioning that he's going to have a private panel or privacy panel, but I didn't see this in the plan as posted, and they didn't mention for what is the height would be. Is this semi-private or fully private? Is blocking the view completely? And the reason is just next to the fence, which is between both of us on the line of property. My pay window, which is 5 panels in the kitchen, is actually giving full visibility inside my kitchen and as I said, my private family room. So as you sit on my couch, you can see anyone standing on the deck as it is now. And they can see us as we are sitting on our couches in our family room, as I said. So if possible, my neighbor can just explain and have this in the plan and describe what is the height, what is the size, what is going to cover the whole side, is kind of the 2 meter or the 3.6 as he's asking for, or it's partially covering this. So nothing mentioned on the plan as I saw it online when I came back from my trip. Thanks.
Okay, I don't believe a revised plan has been submitted, Mr. Watanabe, I suppose.
No, not a revised plan has been submitted, where our intent is to proceed with the current application and then look to provide the necessary privacy after we've gotten the necessary building permit. And just for the context here, both our properties back onto a public path. So his and our property, along with everybody, all the neighbors on that back path, are onto a public walkway and a storm drainage facility. So anybody could be walking past and to see into his property, not exclusive of us. It's not our intent to view into his yard. So I can take this offline, knowing that it's not an issue for the committee, and describe to him the details in which we're looking to install privacy screens.
Okay, actually, that's exactly, Mr. Watanabe, what the committee really does like to encourage is that dialogue. Ms. Willis, you do have a comment. Go ahead.
I do actually, just on that note, it was something I was going to raise, was the comment by Mr. Watanabe that he was going to add this privacy screen, and we normally approve and tie variances to plans. If we tie the variance to this plan, it does not have a privacy screen, so he would be prevented from putting one up in accordance with the approval should we grant it tonight. So I think if we're going to do this, we're going to have to, if he's agreeable to this, and I'm not suggesting that that's to approve it now and then he agrees to put up a screen later on, it would not comply with this committee's approval without it showing on the plan now, is my point.
So there's two ways to do it. We can actually revise the plan, have the plan revised in order to reflect that we want that privacy screen, or we can in fact allow them to have the offline discussion, approve it, understanding that neighbors they're going to work towards trying to find sort of an amicable solution between the two of them. We've seen it go both ways. We don't have, so the issue we have right now is we don't have any privacy screen detail whatsoever. We can't condition it either. So all we would be doing would be, maybe asking for a change, a revised plan that would show the length of where that privacy screen would be with, we don't have the graphic detail, so it would have to be nothing more than notation on the plan that it would reach the 6.9 maximum height allowable under the bylaws. And that's the best that we could do, I think. Unless anybody has another idea. I just want to hear from the panel members right now, if that's all right.
I think the 6.9 meters was relating to a fence between the properties, and that was the fence bylaw. I don't think that, I didn't hear anybody say that that was to be the height of the privacy screen.
I don't know how you regulate the height of a privacy screen. It would seem to me if you've got a fence requirement, then, but we can ask our staff. Why don't we find out? So who's the planner on this one? Ms. Kelly.
Through you, Madam Chair. I know that the maximum height for a fence is 6.9. I'm not familiar with a requirement for a privacy screen. I can confirm that like a privacy screen that's in addition to the deck is considered an accessory structure, so it'd have the same setback requirements, but I don't think there's any prescription in terms of its height. I could take a moment now just to do a quick review of the zoning bylaw to confirm, but I haven't come across anything.
Okay, so the difference is the 6.9 is from grade,
correct?
Grade, as opposed to being 6.9 from the elevation of the deck. So we would almost have, so do have a look, Ms. Kelly. I would be surprised if you could find anything. So absent finding anything, we're almost left to default to what the fence height requirement would be. Unless, I'm open to ideas here, folks.
How about Madam Chair, sorry. What do we just say, subject to the addition of a privacy screen?
That would be the notation along with that. What we'd still have to revise the plan to show where that would be, where it would be installed on the deck, and then the notation that it would be a privacy screen. And I don't think we can. I don't think we can put more detail unless unless somebody has a product number and the rest of it, which I don't think we have. Other ideas from our panel members, Mr. Handel?
Madam Chair, I'm thinking if we just add the notation to allow the kind of tie it to plans with the exception of the addition of a privacy screen along the southern boundary of the deck.
Okay, that might work.
I think that would be fine. Then we don't have to change the plans either. Because the plans as provided do have a north arrow. So we can use that accordingly.
The descriptor, okay. Yeah. Mr. Garnett, I do have a question for you. Is it better for the committee to, so do we have to have a revised plan, or can we simply make the notation within our approval that it is subject to this privacy screen, or do we actually need to amend the plan at this point?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I think whether or not the committee is comfortable making a decision in the absence of final plans is entirely up to the panel. I do think the condition contemplated and proposed by Member Hindle would function. as intended. So I think you could provide that flexibility to give direction to building code services staff to look for the addition of a component you're contemplating being added, but whether or not you're comfortable with that approach falls to your discretion.
So the difference is it a condition or is it a revised plan? So I think I'm hearing we want the revised plan, so that it'll make it clear. If we have a plan that's, so Mr. Watanabe, I think what we're talking about is having you simply add a notation on the plan that describes the addition on the southern boundary of the deck that will include the installation of a privacy fence. And if that works for everybody, I would just add that it should be in consultation with your neighbor. Mr. White, go ahead. You've got something to add.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we may want to suggest that that the privacy screen should be in accordance with any applicable provisions of the fence bylaw or the zoning bylaw that apply to those types of structures.
Okay, that works for me. So, Mr. Watanabe, what say you about just amending that plan to add that notation to recognize the privacy screen, southern boundary of the deck, and in accordance with all applicable regulations of the city, notably fence?
Yeah, I'm okay. I was intending to have the panel agree to the application, and I was hoping that I can consult my neighbor directly and provide him details as opposed to going through the added administrative effort to provide the details. It was our understanding with the zoning team that we could have up to 10 feet on the privacy screen, and that was part of the zoning bylaw guidance. And with that, there wasn't anything else that was required from the minor variance and the committee of adjustments. So it's my request that the committee rule that to proceed, and then I can take it offline with my neighbor and provide him details of the intended structure and privacy.
So what we're suggesting is that we would proceed with the application as amended with the requirement for that revised plan to be submitted before the decision goes out. That's what we're suggesting. It doesn't hold up anything other than you just need to add that notation to the site plan and bring it back in. Okay. And I would keep it like flexible enough. I think Mr. White's proposal to just make sure that it conforms with all applicable bylaws in the city. That makes sense. And that we're targeting very specifically boundary. I think Mr. Hindle said the southern boundary of the deck is what makes sense. So we would simply ask you to add that notation right on the plan. And then that plan is the plan that would be deemed approved. And then you can continue your discussions with your neighbor to talk about what that privacy screen will look like.
Okay.
That work? Ms. Kelly, I see that you've popped up. Did you have something you'd like to add?
Yes, Madam Chair. So I was able to confirm that there is a maximum permitted height under the zoning bylaw. So in this case, it doesn't distinguish between the deck and the privacy screen. So together, the deck and privacy screen would have a maximum height of 3.6 meters. So as the applicant indicated, approximately 10 feet. And to confirm, that would be reviewed, conformity with the zoning bylaw would be reviewed as part of the building permit application as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So that's new information for me. I didn't know that. So 3.6, you said? 3.6?
3.2, apologies.
3.2. All right, so that's your 10 feet. And that makes sense. And it's the combined height from grade of the deck and the privacy screen. Sounds like enough screening from my standpoint. So, okay, if that's all right, then we can agree that that's how we're going to amend the application, is to have that revised plan come in with a notation. Okay. I think I'm going to make a call out to see if there's anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this application, either for or against. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else come forward. So I think committee then we can make a decision based on our discussion. So all those in favor of the application?
As amended, correct?
Yes, as amended. So with the stipulation that a revised plan needs to be submitted very shortly. Mr. Watanabe, I think that's, if you can get that in the next couple of days, that'd be great. And I think I saw a unanimous granting of the application. Okay. And with that, then I think that's all we need to cover. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time this evening. Mr. Jarvis,
Yes.
and Mr. Watanabe, thank you, and good luck to you both.
Thank you.
The next application up is number 3, and it's for 308 Moodie Drive, looking for Mr. Polton. And Mr. Chan as well.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Polton. So, need to read to you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm?
Before I swear and make that statutory declaration through the chair, in the interest of full disclosure. Novatech posted the signs on the property. 3 signs were provided. This was on September 6th, as required. One was along Fitzgerald Road near the hotel. One was posted near a painted canoe between the hotel and a restaurant along Moodie Drive. The 3rd sign was posted near the patio along Moodie Drive. We have confirmation that the signs were posted and visible on the property as of Sunday, September 18th, just a few days ago. Unfortunately, when I was by the property today, this afternoon, 2 of the signs were missing. The 3rd sign, which is the one near the patio along Moodie Drive, remained on the property. Before swearing the statutory declaration, I wanted to provide that information.
Okay, so there was 1 sign remaining on the property, though. They weren't all taken down.
Yes, and we did check, and the hotel did not take down the other 2 signs. They're simply gone. They're missing.
Okay, we have had a situation before where unfortunately signs were taken down off a property, and we had to adjourn, because if you can't swear to the statutory declaration in full, then we can't hear the application. So I'm going to look to Mr. Garnett. Boy, I'm putting you on the spot, Mr. Garnett, this evening. If there is, so it says as long as there's a sign posting, I'm going to guess, maybe wrongly, as long as there's one that was standing for the entirety of that time, we're good to go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For clarity, was the sign posted on the property? Is this all one property?
So the property is a corner lot. It's got frontage along Fitzgerald Road and Moodie Drive, and all 3 signs were posted on the property at those locations I identified previously. Along the property lines, along the frontage, viewable from both roads.
And if I may, the one sign that seems to have survived the winds or whatever is the sign closest to the patio where the variance is, which relates to the variance that's before the committee.
Mr. Garnett, it sounds like we're okay.
I believe we may be okay, Madam Chair. I was just reviewing the regulations in the Planning Act. The requirement is to post a sign that's clearly visible and legible from a public highway or other place to which the public has access at every separately assessed property within the subject land. It sounds to me, based on this information, that may be satisfied.
1 for sure, 3 is a bonus. Sounds like that. All right, so Mr. Polton, you need to swear or affirm.
Yes, I swear.
All right, thank you very much. So we can move on with the application. That's great. No presentation required. So again, I'm opening it up to the members of the committee. Any questions? Comments? Oh, we're very happy with this application, I can see. Okay, well, with that then, we can go to the public portion. Let me just see if we have anybody. So we don't have any public speakers that are registered. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this application? All you need to do is raise your hand and we can bring you in. Not seeing any hands raised. So with that then, members of the panel, I think we can make a decision. So all those in favor of the minor variance. All right, so for the record then, Mr. Poulton, Mr. Chow, the application is granted unanimously by the committee. So good luck.
Thank you very much. And thank you
you
for
very
your
much.
indulgence.
Have a good evening. Thank you very much.
You too. All right, so the next applications that we want to talk about this evening is for 49 Meadowlands Drive. Looking for Mr. Segreto.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Segreto. So I'm going to need to read to you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do I swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear.
Okay, that's perfect. I don't believe we have any housekeeping things. We don't need a presentation, but if you could just catch us up to believe this was deferred. So if you can just tell us, a little bit about the application and what transpired between the deferral and tonight.
This was not deferred.
It wasn't deferred. Why do I have April 17th down? Okay.
I don't think it was deferred. It doesn't ring a bell in my mind, but
and I'm sure it would. So it might just be that my cheat sheet has dates that shouldn't be on them. That's all. So with that, then we've had a chance to look at both the consent and minor variance applications. Does any member have any questions about either one of these? It's for lot width and lot area in both cases. Mr. Hindle.
Yeah, if I could just ask staff to confirm the note that you speak to about the policy 6.2.1 of the new OP. It's my understanding that the zoning does not require the driveways at this time to face different roads, and that in this case, it would not actually be a requirement. It's just a recommendation or a note to file that the new official plan is kind of talking about this requirement.
Thank
Oh,
you.
no, Ms. Flores, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Hi. So yes, that's correct. So I discussed this with transportation engineering staff, and it's a requirement under the new official plan, or pardon me, it's a policy recommendation under the new official plan. However, there's no zoning in effect that will actually require this. So it's just a policy direction, like a higher level policy direction, but the current zoning bylaw doesn't actually require this.
Okay, does that answer your question, Mr. Handel?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Mr. White.
In light of that, Madam Chair, I would question if, in fact, we would have an issue with respect to conformity with the general purpose and intent of the official plan, which is clearly saying something that is not reflected in the zoning bylaw.
Okay. Other thoughts from the members of the panel? Ms. Willis?
I think there's going to be a problem with increasingly detailed official plans where, to me, that kind of a statement in official plan is really inappropriate and it should be left to the zoning bylaw, but be it as it may. I think in response to Mr. White's concern, it talks about the general intent and purpose of the official plan. And that to me is sort of a detail that I think is inappropriate, but is not a general purpose and intent of the official plan. I think that's a way. Otherwise, we're going to have a real problem going forward with this more detailed official plan until the zoning bylaw is enacted.
Okay, Thank you for that. Mr. White, is that a new hand?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just wonder what staff might have to say about the intent of that provision. If we have any, if we approve, I'm concerned if we do approve this application with the plans that are shown that don't reflect this policy of the official planner, is that not a, I'd like to get staff's position on, is that not an issue of conformity with the general purpose and intent of the OP?
All right, so Ms. Clazero, we're going to need you to respond, but I am mindful before you respond, let me just see, that from your standpoint, I think you had no concerns. I'm just looking for that in the report. Yeah, you had no concerns. So notwithstanding your comment about the recommendation of policy 6.2.1, you are still not, I mean, your report says that you don't have any concerns. So what is your take then on the applicability of that recommended policy, as part of the overall, merit of this application?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I appreciate that there is a conflict between the policy recommendation and what's actually permitted under the zoning bylaw. So my take on it was simply that it's a corridor at this point. It's in keeping with the existing pattern of development along Meadowlands Drive, which is single detached dwellings. There are admittedly a lot of driveways on Meadowlands Drive, where in this case, we're taking a single detached home with one dwelling, severing the lot and creating two new driveways. So I recognize that concern there. But ultimately, I think the zoning bylaw itself is more restrictive because it outlines specific performance standards and provisions that are required. At this point, that's not a requirement under the zoning bylaw, and the variance, while I understand the 4 tests include the official plan, the variance is from the zoning bylaw. So I don't see that there's not really, I guess I don't know how we could say other than that it doesn't satisfy the 4 tests with respect to the official plan. It's such a small facet of the official plan that I felt like the rest of that it satisfied every other aspect of the 4 tests. So.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mr. White.
Madam Chair, I just wonder if maybe if there was anything, I don't have the specific wording of that provision. Is there anything in the wording of that provision that might give us a little bit of flexibility in terms of the intent of the policy? Is there something talking about generalities or something like that? Perhaps Ms. Clazero can check that out.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm trying to pull up the new official plan to get the exact wording here, but as I recall, it is that the zoning bylaw will dictate specific performance standards. My internet is quite slow this evening, so.
When we were in person, we all had our copy of the OP and we just opened it up with just how it used to work.
I don't know if I can fit both OPs in my backpack, but anyway, if you just give me a moment, I can take a look. I can dig into it just a moment.
Mr. Hindle, in the meantime, go ahead.
Yeah, Madam Chair, in this instance, I would argue that we're not necessarily tying to plans in this case. We're doing a frontage and area variances and then the severance, but otherwise I think this is one of the scenarios that we would typically not tie to plans, at which case I would say that we have, through the variances and the consents, we would create 2 legal lots, and how their access can be determined in the future through interpretation of building code services. And I don't want to say punt this issue away from ourselves, but effectively do just that.
Well, I've got to say, I do have some support for that. But I think maybe it'll be helpful. Let's hear from Ms. Scozzero on that wording. How are you doing?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm still trying to get the DOP wording, but to respond to Member Hindle's comment, it's an accurate analysis. There's no variances being sought with respect to the proposed development of the 2 detached dwellings. Ultimately, whatever the applicant submits for their building permit application will be reviewed by the zoning plans examiners, and they review against the zoning bylaw, the current zoning bylaw, not the official plan. So the variance being sought, as Member Hindle said, is for the lot width and area. The applicant provided a site plan and elevations, and to be fair, I did identify to the applicant that the initial application showed driveways that were not in conformity with the zoning bylaw. Again, subject to change. The applicant did change it, but yes, ultimately the variance being sought is for the lot width and area, and nothing related to structure or building that's being built. So,
all right, thank you for that that overview. So, Member White, you do raise something important, though. I don't think that, it's not lost on me, your comments with regards to, if in fact the OP has, and I don't know how many of these prescriptive comments that they have, and I think I agree with Member Willis that it's not where they should be. But that said, if they happen to be, and remember, this isn't approved by council documents, so they're the policymakers. They have, they've established that this is an ROP. I think what I'd like to do, and this is for Mr. Garnett, is simply maybe we do need to understand that better from an applicability standpoint, and where sort of what the expectations. So in other words, this is a dialogue with staff that maybe we should have with regards to how some of these things are intended to be treated, because they do seem to be very much in conflict. And I agree with Member White on that. So I guess what we're determining tonight is, the extent of the applicability of that policy, given the nature of the minor variances and the consent that we're dealing with. Ms. Scozzero, you've got it.
thank you, Madam Chair. I do indeed have it, and the key word in section 6.2.14B is that vehicular access shall generally be provided from the parallel street or side street. So it's general. Yeah. So it's general. So yes, it's general.
That's helpful. It's so in other words, it's prescriptive. Actually, it's not. It sounds like it's directional, but not mandatory. Mr. White. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I suspected that that's what we would find. It's going to be interesting to see how that generality is going to be implemented in the new zoning bylaw.
Very much so. Very much so. Okay, so any more questions for either staff or applicant, agent? Okay. Well, that said, I am going to go to the public portion at this point, and we do have speakers registered. So we have Ms. Wilson and Ms. Pratt, if you'd like to come forward.
Hello, I'm here. I think I'm going to redo this whole thing. I think Jill's gone to another meeting. So good evening, committee chair and committee members. The City Community Association would like to give you our comments as usual. Applications for minor variances must satisfy all 4 tests set out under section 45(1) of the Act. And we know what those 4 tests are, so I won't read them. This application with reduced frontages and lot areas does not maintain the general intent and purpose of our existing R1FF zoning. The planner's report references both the existing and the new official plan. The planning report notes the property is designed as a minor corridor within the outer urban transect of the new official plan and is subject to the evolving neighborhood overlay. Committee of Adjustment had indicated to us that they would ask the city for clarification on what legislation is current and allowed to be used. So we're just wondering, has the city provided that information back to you yet? So that's our first question. The planner's report claims that the property is zoned residential first density subzone FF. The increased density proposed via the consent and minor variance applications is consistent with the intent of the R1 FF zone, which is to restrict building form to detached dwellings and regulate development in a manner that is compatible with existing land use patterns so that the detached dwelling residential character of the neighborhood is maintained or enhanced. In fact, it is the R1 residential first density zone that one restricts the building form to detached dwellings in areas designated as general urban area in the official plan. The R1 FF is the subzone that sets the provisions on lot sizes, areas, and setbacks, etc. The planners make no mention of the R1 FF provisions in their report. City View Community Association is aware that the process to change the existing zoning bylaws has just started and will take several years. Therefore, the existing bylaws are in effect until then. The planner's report notes the recommendation in policy 6.2.1. I think we just talked about this. Bracket 4, bracket B of the new official plan is that development of lands with frontage on the corridor Meadowlands Drive and a side street, Raleigh Avenue, vehicular access shall be provided from the side street. What does this statement mean? So we've talked about that, so we sort of understand that now. Are the city planners recommending these changes to the submitted plans? Has the developer considered this? Or is this recommendation not valid as it's under the new draft official plan, which has not yet been approved by the provincial government? So we covered all of those. The City View Community Association would prefer that one of the new builds face onto Raleigh or have its driveway there. The plans currently show an extensive wall of small windows facing Raleigh Avenue. The new infill directly behind this proposal also has an extensive wall facing Raleigh. It would be poor planning to allow an additional 100 feet of wall along Raleigh Avenue. A corner lot has such potential for creating more cohesive, community-friendly frontages. Also, this does not fit with the streetscape character of the neighborhood. The trees, we are glad to see that a good effort has been made to retain and protect a number of the trees. And the ones coming down are due to the health and condition of the trees, not because of the new builds. The City View Community Association appreciates these efforts of the builder. The infrastructure, the City View Community Association is always concerned with the lack of infrastructure here to support these infills. Along Raleigh Avenue, there's a ditch that runs into a large culvert at the corner of Raleigh Avenue and Meadowlands. The City View Community Association is asking that the retention of the stormwater ditch be included in the conditions associated with this application. At each Committee of Adjustment hearing, the City View Community Association has asked that this be put into the conditions for construction here in City View. But now we learn that our tax dollars will be used to reinstate ditches on these infills that have been disregarded, that have disregarded the bylaw and eliminated drainage. The city is working on a study to reinstate all of the ditches in City View, especially those at sites of new builds and infills where culverts and ditches have been removed. And we, the taxpayers, are going to have to pay for that. The Committee of Adjustment is aware of this ditch study and the direction of the city's draft infrastructure master plan, which will do little to upgrade older neighborhoods such as City View. It says that the system design criteria established in the infrastructure master plan are intended to ensure that current city design and level of service guidelines can be met in future neighborhoods. They are not intended to achieve improvements to levels of service in existing development areas.
So Ms. Wilson, the timer shows that your time's up. I'll give you 1 more minute.
Okay, I'm just about finished. Construction issues. The Community Association is receiving many complaints concerning construction sites here. Residents feel that their existing properties are being disrespected and ignored by the construction companies. We have attached recent photos of the site, and we've also included references to the City of Toronto's Good Neighborhood Guide. We note that the City of Toronto has a directive for builders that covers such issues. Although we are aware that this does not fall under the Community of Adjustments mandate, we're hoping that this developer will relay this information to his clients. Also, the city representatives here should bring this back to the city to ensure a similar document is produced to cover our new builds. With so much construction and planned intensification, this is becoming an important issue. We are truly hoping to put this in place in Ottawa, just for best practices. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wilson. All right, so there's a number of things that were raised. I just want to get one clarification from you. So you said at the beginning that you're looking for clarification as to the applicable legislation. Can I have the gallery view back, please, coordinators?
Are you asking me that question?
Yeah, I'm asking you that question. I just need clarification from you in terms of what, when you said that the applicable legislation, I wasn't quite sure what you were referring to.
Are we talking about the 6.2.1? That, because that one, your discussion earlier answered that. The other question that we had was, we had talked before, the planning report notes that the property is designed as a minor corridor with the outer urban transect in the new official plan and subject to the evolving neighborhood overlay. The Committee of Adjustment had indicated to us that they would ask the city for clarification on what legislation is current and allowed to be used. I think that's what you're talking about. Last couple of meetings, we've talked about that, and you had asked if you could have meetings with them to find out the answers to that. So we were just wondering if the city's gotten back to you with those answers yet. Whether we're using the new official plan or the old official plan, what's current.
I don't recall that. I'll be very honest with you. I think the infrastructure information. Does anybody on the panel recall this? And just before you answer, can we get the gallery view back? I'm not getting it for whatever reason. Is there something I need to do?
Your top left-hand corner where you have view, just select gallery.
Thank you very much. Oh, there it goes. Okay, thank you. It's back. I don't know how it switched out, but it did. So, I don't I think in terms of the applicability of the official plans, I mean, the Planning Act's actually pretty clear on all that. So I'm not quite sure, what kind of clarification we're looking from city staff, because we've got a new official plan that's been adopted by council. So it's expression of the council's intent for development and urban planning for the city. And then you have the old one. So there's always this conflict between the new and the old. The new one's not in full force and effect yet, so it hasn't completely replaced the old, but the direction of that plan still needs to be taken into consideration. Is that what you were looking for, Ms. Wilson, or?
Yes, I guess that's it. I think we're just confused about what's to be used, but yeah, it's okay.
All right. Other than that, when you talked about the retention of storm water ditches was something that you're looking for as part of a condition. Is that what I understood?
Yes.
Okay, let's have a look at the.
There's a culvert that runs along Rowley, and we want to make sure that remains there. We also think that there should be a condition in all of these things, but I guess it happens under the building plan. I don't know, but nothing has happened with a lot of these builds. So now with that ditch drainage study, which I think you guys have a copy of it because we sent it in.
I haven't received it. I can tell you, I don't have it. We don't have it.
I sent it to the Committee of Adjustment, like they asked for it probably a month ago now.
So can I interrupt you just for a minute? I think Mr. White may have some insight on that. Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm currently in conversation with the Secretary Treasurer on that issue. I did send in a request that I thought it appropriate that we should receive copies of that for some consideration, and what I think that would be helpful in these deliberations, particularly with respect to the City View community. And I understand from the preliminary information I'm getting back that it's also applicable to the Lakeview community, which I think is also in our area. I haven't received anything that would indicate that I'm going to receive a copy of that, but I'm going to be following up with the Secretary Treasurer on that matter.
All right, so Mr. White, I do believe I'm aware of the exchange. So I think the better approach, if you will just indulge me for a minute, I think every time that we have looked for clarification from city staff on a particular matter that we feel is germane to making a decision, we typically have asked them for presentations on it. And in this case, I think, given that this is new information that they have, that we should be aware of, rather than getting copies of the reports ourselves, maybe we should be asking them for a presentation at the next committee of the whole meeting, and then we'll have our opportunity to ask questions. So, Mr. Garnett, if I can impose upon you to add that to the next meeting's agenda, just make a note of it, and make sure that we can invite the proper representative from the city, and I'm thinking the engineer in particular, who has reviewed the report and who's leading that file.
I can tell you, Madam Chair, that the person that's leading it is Peter Murphy and Eric Toussaint, and that the report that we sent to you is the whole report. It's the written part, and then it's 150 pages worth, because there's 117 pages of maps of the neighborhood. So you can see where the new builds have just filled in ditches and things. So it is a big thing for us. And we thought that you had it already, but okay. At least you're looking into it.
We may have it, Ms. Wilson. The difference is the way that the committee should be collecting evidence. That's what this comes down to. So the best way to do it is to get an interpretation from the city and for them to provide us with that overview and to give us an opportunity to ask questions and get clarification.
I agree. I think that would be great. I agree with you. We sent it in last time because you had asked for it.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's great. So so thank you for doing that. That's terrific. Okay. Any other questions from the panel for Ms. Wilson? Because I'll open it up to the wider audience. So is there anyone in the audience? Mr. White.
Madam Chair, the question with respect that Ms. Wilson had concerning the ditch, I'm assuming that issue, and maybe staff can just weigh in on this, I'm assuming that issue will be addressed as part of grading and drainage plan that's required in association with the consent approval if it's granted. Is that correct?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm not sure I fully understand the question related to the drainage ditch. It's not on private property. So in terms of it being modified as part of the development, I don't see that happening. And certainly the grading and drainage plan is going to address grading and drainage on the site.
All right, thank you, Ms. Glazera. I believe that's the answer. Is that otherwise we would have this, we would have this condition for every single development that's next to a ditch, and we don't, because the intent is that the ditch is not part of the development process, and that grading and drainage should address that where that's going to be affected, where that water is going to run off to. So, okay. All right, so I'm going to go back and make the call to the wider audience. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak to either this consent application or the minor variances for lot area and lot width, I believe? Now's your chance, and it's for 49 Meadowlands Drive. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else come forward. So with that, then, Mr. Segredo, there's quite a number of conditions. Any questions about any of this?
No, Madam Chair, I went through the conditions. I think we're good. There's a corner site triangle that we have to provide, and we'll have the surveyor do that, and then we'll get that registered. With respect to lot grading and drainage, we'll have the civil engineer take care of all of that. Noise control, I think we have an agreement with the city as well. So I think the cash in lieu is in place, and the other ones are fairly standard conditions.
Okay, I think that's it then. With that, I think we can go to a vote unless any member of the panel has some questions. All right, then on the consent application, all those in favor? All right, for the record, we have 4 members in support with member White dissenting. And on the minor variance, all those in favor? All right, same thing for the record, 4 members in support with Mr. White, member White dissenting. And Mr. White, would you like just to state briefly your reasons for your dissent? Oops, you are on mute, Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been fairly consistent on these applications. This one, I had some considerations that I reviewed before coming to a decision on this. It's a somewhat unique circumstance, not entirely like some of the more obvious severance and minor variance applications that I've objected to in this community. The property is located on the former regional arterial road. It has frontage on that road, Meadowlands Drive, which includes storm sewers, curbing, and sidewalk. So it's not entirely like the majority of these infill intensive developments within the community. However, I still am of the view that the general purpose and intent of the lot width and lot area provisions are not being maintained with this application. The variances are not minor, and in my view, not appropriate under the current circumstances of the zoning bylaw in terms of the provisions that are contained therein. So I cannot support this application. I'm still of the opinion that the comprehensive review and possible amendments to the zoning bylaw need to be in place before applications of this nature. Before I can support applications of this nature in this community.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. Okay, with that, good luck, Mr. Segreto.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, enjoy the rest of your evening.
You too. Thanks.
All right, last but not least is application number 7, 257 Lisgar Street, looking for Mr. Daly. Mr. Daly? Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Need to read to you before we go any further. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted on the subject property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear that to be true.
All right, perfect. With that, we do have a couple of housekeeping changes that we need to make to your application. So a couple of things, as a matter of fact. So in terms of the subject, says the lands to be retained being the remainder of 257 Lisgar and shown on the said plan will have frontages of And I guess we're striking out 80.46 meters and we're replacing that with 30.19 meters on O'Connor Street. And we're striking 30.19 meters and changing that to 80.46 meters on Lisgar Street. So we're obviously just flipping the frontage from one street to the other. Do you confirm that?
I confirm that, yes.
Perfect. The other thing I just wanted to mention too, in your notice, you make reference to another application to which this particular application is also affected. So you talk about the property as a subject of zoning bylaw amendment application, and then the numbers are under the Planning Act. Our understanding is that there is also a site plan, an active site plan for this property, is there not?
I'll have to. I'm not sure if the site plan is active at this point. I'm not involved in that process. Perhaps the city planner could speak to that.
All right, so just a minute. Need to find out who I'm looking for here. Ms. Kelly. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Kelly. So
No
in this case, is there an active site plan? Because I've noticed that it's not in the notice if it is.
From my understanding, there's a site plan number, but it's not active. That will be submitted and there will be review once this zoning bylaw amendment is in full force and effect. So that will come at a subsequent stage.
All right. So we're moving ahead with the consent
application, correct?
Prior to that process being terminated. Is that correct?
The
prior to
zoning
being
bylaw
commenced?
amendment?
No, the site plan. So we're dealing with consent application even before the site plan is actually before the city, from what I can tell. Is that correct, Mr. Daly?
Yes, that's correct. I know that the minor variance for the development in terms of the increase to the height to 27 stories and a few other items has been approved by council and should be final and binding, I believe, at the beginning of October.
Yeah. So it's not through its appeal period, from what I can understand. Right?
That's correct.
So we're going to need a presentation from you, Mr. Daly, because we did see the submission that you had, but from our standpoint, that didn't do it for us. So we're hoping you have a graphic that will provide us with more information about the stratified severance portion.
Sure. And so do you have a copy of the reference plan that you're able to pull up? Okay, excellent. So what we're looking to do essentially, and this is it's a little bit small on my screen. I'm not sure if it's larger on yours, but we're looking to sever parts 3, 4, and 5. So it's in this area right here. This is part of it, and add that land to this lot over here, which is 108 Nepean.
Sorry to interrupt. So can we get a zoom in on that, because I am not seeing that at all. So if we can get a zoom in on that part of the survey plan. You don't have anything color coded though, do you, Mr. Daly, in terms of being really able to demonstrate what we're talking about?
I don't, but I think if we can get in close on the plan, I'll be able to explain it fairly well for the panel. Okay, that's better on my end here.
Just need to scroll up a little bit so we get the whole picture. Okay.
Okay. So essentially what we're looking to do is take parts 3, 4, and 5 here and add it. This is part of 257 Lisgar. So 257 Lisgar, I'm not sure. I guess you can't see my mouse kind of rolling around here, but parts 3, 4, and 5 are part of 257 Lisgar. Currently, it's access coming in off of Nepean Street, and the apartment building is to the south, facing on Lisgar. And so,
sorry, so Nepean Street is to the north then of this? All right. Oh, there it is. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yes, O'Connor is to the west, and Lisgar is to the south.
Okay.
And so we have an existing apartment building on Lisgar. Currently, this area and a portion of, this area being parts 3, 4, and 5, and a portion below is access off of Nepean and parking. What we're looking to do is take this portion of the property, transfer it to 108 Nepean Street, which is the property to the west, and basically what takes you to O'Connor Street and Nepean. So it will be that corner block essentially. What we're looking to do as well is reserve an easement for access and egress over parts 4 and 5 for the benefit of 257 Lisgar. And then there'll be a joint use and maintenance agreement with respect to those items. So, for maintenance, repair, asphalt repair, that kind of thing. And then the second application is with respect to part 7, which I can see on my screen in the lower left-hand side here. And what that is, it's an access ramp to the underground parking. And so that access ramp is the 108 Nepean block is going to need access from over that part 7 to get into the parking garage, and what will essentially be the development on 108 Nepean. So they're going to have an access easement, access and egress easement over part 7. And if we scroll up on this plan here to the top, I can show you.
Can I just ask a question about that then for part 7?
Sure.
So that portion then is it integral to the building? So is that a stratified portion, or is that is that just an addition of a part to a parcel of land? I'm trying to figure out what's stratified and what's not.
Sure. So part 7 is it comes in off the access ramp. So what we saw below was kind of a bird's eye view of what we would see looking at it from above. You can't see underground and what we were looking at in that portion below. Up here, you can see part 7 carries over, and you can see it'll show concrete block at grade, and there's an entrance over there into the parking garage on the top right corner of part 7. So this is below grade here. If you take the mouse and go over to the right hand side there of part 7. Yeah, right at the top there, you can see where part 7 adjoins part 3. And so all of part 3 there, that is below grade as well. So that's the underground parking garage. And so essentially the owner of 108 Nepean, they'll be able to access their portion of the property through this access ramp. So it's shared access essentially. So 257 Lisgar, as well as 108 Nepean, will have access through this ramp into the parking garage. 257 Lisgar will then have access to its portion of the parking garage, and then 108 Nepean will have access to its portion of the parking garage. And we can see in these portions, these pieces up top here, if you just scroll down a little bit there. So parts 3 and 4, you can see that part 3 is below grade. Then you have part 4, which is at grade. And then part 3 is above it. So essentially, the development at 108 Nepean, it will own the air rights above part 4. And parts 4 and 5 is the access and egress easement for the benefit of 257 Lisgar.
So part 3 is owned by who, and part 4 is owned by who?
So parts 3, 4, and 5 will all be owned by 108 Nepean, but parts 4 and 5 will be subject to an easement in favor of 257 Lisgar for access and egress to their property. And so part 4 is at grade.
So, Mr. Dooley, just as a note for any future stratified applications that you might bring forward, color coding would be very helpful, and a very clear cross section that shows maybe the two the two directions, from the PN and from O'Connor, would have been really helped us try to visualize what was happening here. That's very hard to see this in a two-dimensional format, and to try to understand what we're talking with regards to, you know, the height of what some of these stratified requirements are. To me, until you showed me that, I could not piece it together, and we were looking for more material, couldn't find anything more to really help us in trying to understand it. But that was helpful. I have a much better idea now of what it is that you're proposing. Any questions from the members of the committee? It's a complicated, you know, these stratified severances are a challenge. Mr. Hendel, and then I'll go to Ms. Willis.
Snuck in just in time. Yeah, I would echo the thoughts and speakings of the chair about the help to kind of visualize these, especially in the absence. You provided us with no elevations of the proposed building and other things that would give real context to how these kind of stitch together. I'm lucky enough, I'm familiar with the area, so I have a general sense of what building is proposed, but that's immaterial for this purpose. Like, it should be a standalone application and be very clear. Now, related to that, I'm just looking at the R plan that's provided. And I'm finding a bit of a discrepancy between the, especially the top left part and the diagram A, and then the overall plan that's provided on the bottom, where on the bottom, part 7 is kind of just the ramp itself and does not extend below grade kind of beyond that. But in the diagram A, part 7 extends all the way until part 3. But at the bottom of the R plan, it stops right at the bottom of the ramp and does not extend all the way to part 3. Is that just because of it's the strata, that it's vertical all the way to the sky for the ramp, and then is stratified below grade all the way until part 3?
That's correct. Yes, the diagram at the top is showing part 7 as it enters underground, whereas down below, that portion of the plan is only showing what you can see from essentially a bird's eye view.
Okay. And then the easement that's over parts 4 and 5, is that just for pedestrian access, or is it for driveway and vehicular access as well?
It's for vehicular and pedestrian access and egress.
Okay, so it'll be an access lane to the existing surface parking that is remaining on the existing property.
That's correct.
Okay. I think I've stitched it together, but thank you.
It is difficult to really stitch it together, as Member Hindle has mentioned. Ms. Willis.
I just was wondering a couple of things. Are 108 Nepean and 257 Lisgar to be interconnected below grade in any way? Like, are they able to access from one parking garage to another?
They will be, yes.
They will. Okay. And in the zoning bylaw that is waiting for final approval, is that a detailed zoning bylaw that uses the footprint of the proposed 108 Nepean in order to come up with a schedule? I'm just wondering the extent to which the site plan has been finessed with the city, and whether there's any concern that these accesses might be modified through the progress of the site plan application.
I don't think so in terms of the access to what's there. So the parking garage is existing currently. So what's going to happen when 108 is developed, it's going to be essentially an add-on to what's there to develop more parking at the 108 Nepean site.
Into the 108 Nepean site. Okay. Okay, I've got it. Thank you.
So it'll become a shared driveway that will serve both the existing structure and then the new build, rather than build a second ramp.
That's correct.
Any other questions? All right, I guess it's we're all clear. Okay. With that, I'm just looking at the rest of the comments from our staff. Just a minute, bear with me. So there's a number of conditions. Had a chance to look at them, Mr. Daly?
I have, and we have no issue with the proposed condition.
All right.
So,
Okay.
just one additional question, Mr. Daly. I think given the fact that the site plan is not yet underway, I think often this committee has concerns with advancing, especially variances, which this is not, this is severances. There's always a concern in going ahead with applications prior to site plan, at least for circulation and some confidence that there's not going to be any changes. I think do you have that level of confidence given, I guess, that the site specific zoning is imminently passed, or it was just waiting the finalization of the appeal period? You have confidence that a site plan proposal, which as Ms. Willis, I think was alluding to, that would not change the application in this case?
Yeah, my client, we discussed that, and they're fairly confident that there's no issues in that regard, and so they've instructed me to proceed with this portion at this time.
Okay. That being said, then need to go to the public hearing of portion of our meeting. I don't have anyone on my speakers list, but if there's anyone out there in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this consent application, there's some creation of stratified parcels at 257 Lisgar. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. I'd just like to echo some of the concerns from Ms. Willis and Member Hindle. We really typically don't deal with applications in advance of a site plan control process that is fairly advanced, and that we have some comfort that in fact this will not change. But I'm going to take it, if you need changes, you're back to us, and if you're back to us, we want a color-coded plan. That's all I'd like to say. And some context, as Member Hindle was suggesting. But with that, then, if there's no further questions by the committee on this application, I think we can go to a vote. So all those in favor of this consent application. So Member White. All right. So for the record, the decision is unanimous. We are granting the consents. So good luck, Mr. Daly. And if we see you again, we see you again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Well, I believe that takes us to the end of our agenda for tonight. So I do need a motion to adjourn. Do I have anyone? Mr. Hindle, seconded by Ms. Markovich. So before we go, I'd like to thank our planning staff, Ms. Kelly, Ms. Scozzero, as well as Ms. Young. Ms. Young, I know you didn't have to pipe in here tonight, but it's always good to know that you're there if we need you. So thank you, ladies. And thank you again to our committee staff. Meeting went very well again.